The candle was already lit when I arrived. That was the detail that stayed with me afterward. Not the empty chairs, not the documents, not even the note, but the candle, burning patiently in the center of the table as though the evening were proceeding exactly as planned. Someone had arranged this carefully, had called ahead, made the reservation, requested the corner table with the good light, and then lit the candle before leaving, so that I would walk in and feel for one small hopeful moment that something warm was waiting. The restaurant was the kind where the menus had no prices. Cream walls, low brass fixtures, sound of other people's quiet celebrations drifting from nearby tables. I'd worn the blue dress. I'd done my hair. The bread plate held two things, a manila envelope and a folded note, cream-colored, the monogrammed kind his mother kept in her writing desk. I read the note first, then the documents. Then I put both down and stood very still with one hand on the table's edge. Not because I needed steadying, but because the table was there and my hand moved to it automatically, the way you reach for something solid when the ground shifts. The candle threw light across the signature page, his handwriting on the signature line, hers and his father's as witnesses. They had planned this together, all three of them. This was not impulsive. I stood there long enough that the waiter appeared at a careful distance, a young man with the trained discretion of someone who had learned to read tables. Will others be joining you this evening? No, I said. Just me. A pause so brief it barely existed. Very good. Shall I bring the menu? I sat down. Please. The bracelet on my wrist was my mother's. Thin gold, slightly tarnished at the clasp, the kind of thing that looks like nothing until you know what it is. She'd left it to me with no instruction, which was itself an instruction. I'd worn it every day for 4 years, through the marriage and its requirements and the specific texture of being someone's wife in a family that had never quite accepted the application. I twisted it once while I read the menu. An old habit, I ordered the duck, a glass of the burgundy, bread, which arrived warm, which I ate slowly while the other tables murmured around me, and the candle shortened by degrees. There is a particular quality to eating alone in a restaurant where you were expected to be celebrated. I want to be honest about it. It wasn't dignified, not entirely, not at first. There was a period somewhere between the bread and the first course where my eyes did something I didn't give them permission to do, and I looked at the window beside me and watched the street outside with great focus until the feeling passed. But it passed, and then I was just a woman eating duck in a good restaurant on her birthday, which is not the worst thing a person can be. I thought about Miriam, his mother, and the specific architecture of her disapproval. It had never been loud. That was the thing people didn't understand when I tried to explain it later. She'd been perfectly pleasant in the way that certain people are perfectly pleasant, which is to say every warmth was calibrated and every omission deliberate. The infertility had given her a cleaner narrative than she'd had before. Before the diagnosis, her objections to me had been harder to articulate. After she had language, she used it quietly, consistently, over 4 years, until her son had learned to use it too, or perhaps he had always known it and was simply given permission. I didn't hate them. That surprised me, sitting there. I examined the feeling carefully, the way you check a pocket you thought was empty, and found something close to pity, and beneath it, something that felt almost like relief. The waiter reappeared as I was finishing the wine. He set down a small plate without a word, a single slice of chocolate torte, a birthday candle unlit, a card from the kitchen with the restaurant's name embossed on it. He lit the candle with a long match. We do this for all birthdays, he said. Not warmly, not coldly, simply. Enjoy your evening. He was gone before I could respond. I looked at the small flame for a moment. I didn't make a wish. I just let it burn while I checked my phone, which I'd kept face down through dinner, and saw the email that had arrived at 11:47 that morning, before I dressed, before the blue dress, before the drive over. I'd been waiting on it for 6 weeks. The subject line was straightforward. So was the offer inside. The architecture firm had been a thing I'd begun quietly 2 years ago, when it became clear to me that I needed something that was entirely mine, not as contingency, not as escape plan, just as fact. Professional self that existed independently of the marriage and its orbit. I'd told no one in his family. I'd barely told him, and what I'd told him he hadn't retained. The offer was better than I'd projected. Significantly, I read it twice in the candlelight while the torte sat untouched. Then I set my phone down and ate the torte, which was excellent, and thought about the fact that tomorrow I would call a lawyer, my own, not theirs, and that the day after that I would begin the process of becoming only myself again. Which is a longer process than it sounds, but not an impossible one. Twisted the bracelet at my wrist. My mother had worn it for 30 years before me. She'd built a practice, raised a daughter alone, grown old without apology. She hadn't left the bracelet with instructions because she'd believed I'd know what to do when the time came. I left a tip that was too generous and walked out into the cool of the evening. 34, the candle behind me, still burning. Whatever came next was already mine.